Hello, welcome. My name is Blake. Today I'm bringing you my mid-year freakout tag. It is July, which means that we are more than halfway through the year at this point, which is crazy. It's a very busy time at work and I'm trying to get some content out. And I love doing this tag every year. So it's like at the top of my list every year. It's one of the most exciting videos I do. I love reflecting back on the year and talking about the books I loved, the books that I didn't love as much, and looking at what's to come. I also have a microphone now. It's supposed to drown out some of the background noise. So maybe you won't be hearing the cats and the dogs loudly playing or chewing things in the background. I don't know. Um, as they are playing in the background. So hopefully you can't hear them. But I have read 40 books so far this year from January through June. The best book you've read so far this year. And this one was a very easy pick for me, and that is The Wisdom of Crowds by Joe Abercrombie. I have just absolutely fallen in love with Abercrombie's world and his characters and his writing. I think that he's absolutely brilliant. His character work is unparalleled in my opinion. I have flown through this series. In the Wisdom of Crowds was the third and final book in the Age of Badness trilogy. We are in this world where we have this kind of industrial revolution occurring, and this industrial revolution is making some people rich, but then for most of the population, for the common folk, it is a very difficult and horrible time. The industrial revolution is exploiting a lot of people, and we have kind of these people coming together and they want to bring about this great change. And we have a lot of conflict. There's a lot of political unrest in this world. We have the people wanting to rise up against those in power. We have these various countries at war with one another. And we have territories in the north, fighting for power. So there is a lot going on. And in this third and final book, I feel like everything, all these little plot threads from the first two books, well, even before that, actually, some things are reminiscent from the standalones and from the original First Law trilogy. Like, I feel like everything has kind of come together. We have all these characters, all these little threads, and I feel like Joe does that so well, bringing everything together. And I love it. I had a fantastic time reading this book. And I buddy read this entire series with my friend, and we never ran out of things to talk about. We had so many great discussions, and we were only reading, 2 or 3 chapters a day together, and we always had something to say. We were always messaging each other. We still talk about it months later after finishing it. We still message one another back and forth about it. We talk about the character arcs. We talk about how characters have similar arcs to one another. We've talked about, the short stories, and we've talked about, what we're expecting in the future of this world. And we had so many thoughts and theories, and there are just so many twists and turns throughout the series, and the world is so dark and so bleak, but at the same time it really has this sense of humor to it. And I think that Joe is just so funny. Like, his sense of humor just gels with mine so well. And I love kind of his morbid, sarcastic kind of sense of humor that some of these characters have. And I just had a fantastic time. This has definitely solidified itself as one of my favorite worlds, one of my favorite series. Oh boy. We just came back inside from a walk, but it started raining, so it was cut a little short. So he wants to go back out. Go on, Bodie. Here, Bodie, lay in your bed. Lay in bed. The next question is best sequel you've read so far this year. I have not read very many sequels this year. I've not started very many series this year either. I have mostly been reading a lot of standalones this year. But of the couple that I have read, I want to give a shout out to This Poison Song, or The Poison Song by Jen Williams. It is the third and final book in the Ninth Reign, the Winnowing Flame series. I've loved this series. I really loved book 1. I thought book 2 had a bit of middle book syndrome, but then book 3 came back swinging. And it was kind of like a slow start as we were building up this conflict. So we have this world where we have these various races. We have witches who have witch fire, and then we have these creatures that are like elves. But he's gonna squeak his toy now. And they're kind of like elves slash vampires, the Aborians, and they, were once this mighty people, but then their tree god died, and then the people started dying along with this tree god. And periodically, this alien race returns to destroy this world, and these people can never rebuild because this alien race is always destroying what they've done. We have these races coming together to fight this alien race, and they have these giant war beasts that they are fighting alongside. And this third book was very political. It was just an entire like long fight sequence, and I had a really wonderful time with it. I feel like everything, like we had most of our questions wrapped up, almost everything was answered. We had everything wrapped up. A lot of our questions were answered. I really loved this world and these characters, and I was really sad to say goodbye to them, and I didn't realize how much I would miss them until I had finished it. Next up, I have new release you haven't read yet but want to, and I have a couple of answers for this. I tried to choose a couple of different subgenres of fantasy for this question, and I would really like to read The Girl with a Thousand Faces. I have heard great things about this one. I believe it's Chinese-inspired mythology, and we have someone who is a ghost talker. So I'm really interested in that one. I also have The Unicorn Hunter I recently purchased, and it's by Catherine Arden. I absolutely loved her, what is it called? The Girl in the Tower series, the Bear and the Nightingale series. I don't know what the actual like trilogy is called, but I loved those books. And then her book Warm Hands of Ghosts was a miss for me. I ended up DNFing it about 50% of the way through. But historical fiction is not my bag, and I feel like that one I was a little misled going into it. And I know that unfortunately, like I think this one is also historical fiction, but I've heard some people say it leans more fantasy. So I'm very hopeful that this one will appeal to me more than The Warm Hands of Ghosts maybe. I also have Mordaunt's Peril, and this is another, I think this is like a detective story, but someone can like speak with the dead, and he's trying to solve crimes based on the dead speaking to him and giving him clues. And I've heard great things about this one as well. I have not heard as many people talk about this one, but it was one of my anticipated releases for the year, and I was kind of like waiting to see reviews for it. The next question is, what is your most anticipated release for the second half of the year? And I did not do a great job keeping up with upcoming releases this year. I feel like I didn't really know what was coming out, so I had to do some digging online to figure out what was coming out. And I had two that kind of jumped out at me. So Robert Jackson Bennett's third book in his Leviathan series, I believe is what it's called. I think it's called Trade of Blood. That one is coming out. I really enjoyed book one. I liked book two even more. So I'm really hoping that book three will continue that trajectory of me enjoying them more as I go. I'm also kind of interested in The Infinite State by Richard Swan. I was not interested in it in the beginning, but then earlier this year I read his Justice King's book, and I did enjoy it, and I wanted to I picked up like the rest of the series at the used bookstore, and I really want to continue on with Richard Swan's works. But I saw the cover for Infinite State, and I thought it was like a lit fic or like dystopian slash lit fic. It didn't look like it was something that I would be interested in. But then they released like an alternate cover for it where it looks like a floating police car. Like it looks very sci-fi leaning. So then I started looking into it, and I saw that it was kind of like a detective story in a sci-fi world. And I believe it also has dystopian elements. So now I'm kind of interested in this one. Dystopian is not my favorite though. So I'm going to wait for reviews on this one to see what people are saying about it. But I feel like given how popular Richard Swan is, I feel like a lot of people will love this one. Biggest disappointment. And this one is Agnes Aubert's Mystical Cat Shelter. No one is more surprised about this than me. I went into it when it was first announced very hesitant because I'm not a fan of cozy fantasy, but I loved her Emily Wilde books. They were some of my favorite reads, every year that I read them. I loved the idea, the premise for the novel. So, dueling wizards damage her cat shelter, so she has to, find a new place to stay quickly, and she ends up in renting a space from a potentially evil sorcerer. Like, what a fun premise. Like, I loved the idea. I'm also a cat rescuer myself and a pet rescuer in general. I have 4 cats at the moment, and I've had cats and dogs my entire life. So anything with like someone rescuing pets, I thought that I would enjoy that. But this book ended up kind of being a real drag for me. Like, I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I felt kind of bored while reading it. Like, it ended up being just okay. Like, she's a good writer. There were great elements to the story. I wanted more, and maybe my expectations were just too high. I don't know, but I was very confident that it was going to be a 4 or 5-star read, and it was not. The next question is, what is your biggest surprise so far of the year? I always like to answer this with 2 answers, a biggest surprise in a good way and a biggest surprise in a bad way. But my biggest surprise in a bad way was The Tyrant's Throne by Sebastian de Castell. This is the 4th and final book in the Greatcoat series. And this series has been an interesting one for me. I was not crazy about book 1. Like, I thought it was fine, but it definitely had some tropes that I was not crazy about. But I continued reading the series because I heard that they got better, and they did. I loved book 2. I loved book 3 even more. Like, I feel like book 3 addressed some of the issues that I had with the series, some of the problems that I had. And I really thought that, like, we were on a trajectory for the 4th book to be a 5-star read as well. But instead, I feel like the 5th book was incredibly inaccurate. Like, I feel like the characters did not act like themselves. Our main character, Falkio, he is trying to uphold the final wish of his king before the king dies, and then the Greatcoats are kind of disbanded and spread across the country, and they are like the Three Musketeers, basically. And we're following Falkio and his 2 closest friends, who are also Greatcoats, and they are fulfilling this final wish. And they get involved in like a lot of the politics of the kingdom, even though they don't really want to be involved in the politics. And there's a lot of sword fighting and a lot of banter, and we have like this really strong brotherly bond. Like, all of those things are still there in this 4th and final book. Like, I still enjoyed some of those aspects, but I feel like some of the decisions the characters made, some of the things the characters did, like Falkio in particular, felt very out of character. And then by the time I got to the end of book 4, I kind of felt like everything was a waste. We have I feel like we had a tragic ending for a certain character, and it felt unnecessary. I feel like we spent so long working towards something, and it was like, well, sorry, too bad. Anyways, moving along. And then we had a villain who we have to end up working with, and I was not fond of that plot line. I feel like everything kind of just fell apart for me in this 4th and final book, and I was really quite sad about it. Because I picked this book up thinking that it was going to be like a fun, quick read, and I thought that it was going to be just like a great finale and a great way to send off the series. And my biggest surprise in a good way, I have here The Last Unicorn by Peter S. Beagle. And this one I have owned for many years. My mom gifted this book to me when I was in elementary school, I want to say. So like I've had this book for a really long time. It's been on my shelf forever. And my sister used to love the film, the animated The Last Unicorn film. And there was a phase when she like watched it every day. And I was also like watching it with her every day. So I never read the book because I thought because I had seen the movie that I would not enjoy the book. And I feel like the movie's also really sad. Like I remember I always cried when I watched it. So I was very hesitant about reading the book. One, because I know how it's going to happen, and two, I knew that I would probably cry. And I ended up being pleasantly surprised. Like, yes, I do feel like the film is very similar, but it was really beautifully written. Like, Peter S. Beagle is a poet with words. I loved his descriptions and the descriptions of the unicorn magic and the forest. And it's kind of like got this element of a travel story. I feel like I wish I had read it when I was younger. I think I would have loved it even more, but I loved the writing style, and I had some very different opinions reading this book as an adult and like watching it as a kid. I think my thoughts were very different. Like there were characters that I enjoyed more, or there were things that I thought about in a different way, like reading it as an adult. Question 7 is favorite new author, and that is debut or new to you. It usually takes me a couple of books to figure out if someone's a favorite author. Like I don't want to just read one book and say that someone is a favorite author. So I usually wait until I've read 2 or 3 books by an author before saying, yes, this author is for me. And this year I'm going to pick Rebecca Ross for this one. I ended up being pleasantly surprised when I read Wild Reverence, and I'm going to talk about it more in the next question. But I read her book Divine Rivals, and I loved that book. I was not as crazy about the sequel. I found it just okay, Ruthless Vows. But then I read Divine Rivals this year, and I feel like Rebecca Ross just has such a way with words, and I feel like every time I read her books, I just want to just read them all in one sitting. I find that they are just so easy for me to get through, and I feel like they really just like transport me to the world. So for this one, I'm going to go with Rebecca Ross, newest fictional crush. And I usually don't get fictional crushes these days. And I know some people view this question as childish, but like it's a tag. It's all in good fun. Um, but I usually change this question to favorite couple if I don't have an answer for this question. And for this one, I have Vincent and Matilda from Wild Reverence. This is part of the Divine Rivals series. It's by Rebecca Ross. I love Rebecca Ross's works. I love her writing. I feel like her romances are just these perfect slow burn. And I feel like Rebecca writes these really beautiful stories. I feel like they're really poetic. They feel like modern fairy tales. I feel like she writes like her magic and her world. They feel so rich and so beautiful as well. And her romances are just the perfect slow burns. Like if you are looking for a slow burn, read these. Read Divine Rivals, read Wild Reverence. I loved this book, and I'm not usually a fan of romance, but Wild Reverence is just my favorite romance story that I've read this year. The next question is newest favorite character, and for this one I have Prince Orso from The Wisdom of Crowds or the Age of Madness trilogy. I remember starting this series, and I was not a fan of Orso's father in the former trilogy. I thought he was completely pompous and absurd. He was so incompetent. He was just a character that I loved to hate. And I was always ragging on him, in my group chat with my friend while we were reading. I just was always hating on his dad. And whenever we were introduced to Orso, I was like, oh, great, here's going to be another character for me to just hate on. At first, he's kind of a bumbling idiot, and I feel like he's still a bumbling idiot, but like in an endearing kind of way. You know what I mean? Like he makes a lot of bad decisions and a lot of dumb choices, but I feel like he's one of the only characters in the series who is trying to do, you know, the right thing. He's trying to do something morally good. Um, and I really respect that given the situation he's in, given that he has grown up to be the prince of this empire, and he has, this responsibility that he doesn't really want. I do really enjoy that, and I love his humor as well. He was cracking me up in this entire series, but even in this final book, he's so funny. Next question is a book that made you cry. I'm not a big book crier. I feel like I go through phases where I cry a lot in books, and then I feel like I go through phases where I don't. Um, but I did get a little emotional reading Project Hail Mary. And if you've read it, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. But like I had like tears in my eyes, like my eyes were watering. Um, they weren't like I wasn't crying, I wasn't sobbing, but there were definitely tears in my eyes, and they were on the verge of leaking out. So I feel like this story is got such a dark tone to it. Like it's a very bleak situation, but also it feels very hopeful in terms of its larger story. And the next question is a book that made you happy. And for this one, I have A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R.R. Martin. This was my very first ever George R.R. Martin read, and I was like over the moon about it. I have always wanted to read something by George R.R. Martin, and I've really been loving a lot of knight books recently, and that one was short, and like I saw it at the bookstore. I decided to pick it up and give it a go, and I really enjoyed it. I was a bit hesitant because I knew that it was connected to the Game of Thrones series in some way, and I have never read or watched Game of Thrones except for a couple of episodes here and there. So I didn't really know anything. I didn't know if I was supposed to read it after something else. I didn't know if the characters were supposed to make sense to me. And some names definitely stood out to me, but like I didn't know what the significance was while reading. But I had a blast while reading this. I love A Night Story. It's a collection of 3 novellas. I really loved Duncan, our tall and awkward knight, and Egg, his squire. And I had so much fun reading it. It reminded me of A Knight's Tale, the movie with Heath Ledger. And after I read this book, I watched the film, and I had a good time with it. What is the most beautiful book cover you have bought or received this year? I think I've got a couple. So the Unicorn Hunter by Catherine Arden has a really beautiful cover. I love it. Looks like a painting. I don't know. I love covers like this. I also want to mention The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. I don't know. I really love these covers like this with the bright colors, and there's a dragon on it, so I feel like it's kind of giving me some clue as to what it's about. And I don't know, it's really eye-catching. I love it on my shelf. I also picked up The Amber Owl by Juliette Marillier earlier this year. It's like a very like simplistic cover, and it's got some animals around the edges. I really love a simplistic cover. The last question is, what are your priorities for the rest of the year? And I'd really like to read more epic fantasy. I feel like I haven't read very much epic fantasy this year, and I'm really in the mood for it. Or a lot of the epic fantasy that I have read, I have been lukewarm on, or I haven't loved it. Mostly I haven't picked up very much this year, and I really want to change that. And I have Ascendant. I think it's by Michael R. Miller. I really want to read that series. I would really like to read some Adrian Tchaikovsky. The Bloodsworn Saga by John Gwynne. I'd like to continue on with that series. Dungeon Crawler Carl is up there for me. I think I'd like to do a reading vlog for that one just because it's so popular and I really think I'm going to love it. I would also like to read The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I want to continue on with my Abercrombie reading kick. But that is the mid-year freakout tag. Please let me know what your favorite read of the year so far has been. I would love to know. Let me know what your least favorite read of the year has been. I'd love to know that too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have a great rest of your day, and I will see you again with another video soon. Bye.